We'd like to thank the following sponsors for helping provide this video.
Management Association. I'm not going to pass up this opportunity to also do some stats survey. So first of all, I want to thank Agile New England for co-hosting this event with us. We certainly have had a lot of synergies, and this is a perfect opportunity for us to bring the forces together. So thank you for being here. Show of hands, people here who had heard of BPMA before this event. Okay, we're happy to hear that. The others, we need to work on how to get to you. And how many of you are members of BPMA, premium or basic? Excellent. Well, our membership director certainly has a lot of work to do, and these are the facts. So the important thing that you guys can realize is there's a lot of overlap in your interest by way of being here for Agile New England program and what BPMA offers in terms of our content. So we'd love to see you there. There's 2 levels of membership, and you can go to the website and learn more about it. The website to remember is bostonproducts.org. So just a quick few logistics in terms of what BPMA is doing in this space. BPMA traditionally through our programs is offering content, really good opportunity for networking, mentorship. So our mission is to advance the science of product management. We like to call it science more than art, but either way it is both art and science, and so we help advance that in the community. So in doing so, we have 10 programs per year. Our next program for May, the scheduled event, is on Internet of Things. It's become a buzzword, obviously, but product management for Internet of Things is not as well discussed in the community, and we have an excellent group of panelists that will be there. Jeff Kaplan, who you probably have heard if you're interested in that space, is a known entity. He will be moderating that event. It's in Boston at General Assembly on the 21st of May. I mentioned networking is one of our missions, but at different levels. So if you are an executive at a senior level in an organization, your chances are you're having some challenges you want to discuss with your peers. Product Executive Forum is an excellent program that happens every month. It's an invitation-only thing where peers get together and talk about their challenges with it. Where VP level people get together and talk about their challenges with the peers. So if you are interested, reach out to me. Is Neil in this room? But you can reach out to me and I can introduce you to the right people. One of the content delivery mechanism is also 5 workshops that we run. This week, 5 workshops that we run each year. These are half-day workshops. Coincidentally, it's not planned this way. Bruce is going to run that, who is our moderator today, is going to run that upcoming workshop. Really good content, obviously, on roadmaps. He's one of the best guys I know who does road mapping, so I certainly encourage you to attend that. Once again, thank you to our sponsors. Is any of our sponsor here? Probably not. We need to let them know that this is a great opportunity. Last but not least, I want to mention the Career Center. Lots of us have been various stages of time, either in transition, looking for opportunities, or at our organizations are finding it hard to find product managers. Our Career Center is rich with resumes and employers, so please take advantage of that. BostonProducts.org. And last but not least, one more thing to mention is our product log, newly launched product log blog, Product Hub BPMA. If that's not a tongue twister, producthub.bpma.org. Lots of good content for you to visit. So, folks, here we talked about networking, content, but also mentorship is one thing we do. We have an annual program that pairs you up. Pairs a senior product executive with an up-and-coming product manager. These are free-form discussions. You get to have a chance with one-on-one to work with the product executive. So it's a very popular program in our 5th year now. Again, if you're interested, please do let me know, and I'll hook you to the right people. So thanks again for your patience while we run through it. We wanted to use this opportunity to introduce you guys to the various things BPMA does, and I hope that resonates with your interests. Today's program was set up through our partnerships and alliances program, which is one of the groups within BPMA. And I also want to thank Mihal for setting this up and working with Agile New England to make it happen. Lots of hard work behind this event. So let me introduce our moderator, Bruce, who will, for today, who will introduce the panel. Round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you. So thanks everybody for coming. We're going to be talking about product owner versus product manager. Are they the same thing? Are they different? Can you hear me in the back? Is that a little bit better? Okay, great. But first I'd like to introduce our panel. We've assembled this panel of experts, and hopefully the collective wisdom of this group can provide some answers, even if there aren't any single right answers. Hopefully the aggregate gives us all a little bit of something to work with at least. So let me introduce them one at a time. First, here next to me is Vanessa Ferranto. Vanessa is a senior product manager at Leaf. She's, her reason for being on the team here is that she is the down in the trenches, doing the job now, been a product manager, been also a product owner. She led the product team in Agile process implementation at Leaf and also at a large media company. So she's done it small and large. And she's been in many different product management roles across multiple projects. She just completed launching an MVP analytics product for small and medium-sized restaurants that leverages data pulled from their point of sale device to evaluate business performance. And I asked her if she had any particular axe to grind. And what she said was that actually her problem is that many times the product manager and the product owner are confused and combined in an organization to the organization's detriment. So feel free to ask her about that and dig into it. Next to Vanessa is Gottesdiener. She's the founder of EPG Consulting, and she brings the diverse perspective of a coach who's worked with many different organizations on Agile training, and her expertise in particular is on collaborative practices. She says that she's got clients from diverse industries, including BD Biosciences, Eli Lilly, HealthStream, One America, Starbucks, Zipcar, Roche Diagnostics, Weatherford, Vanguard. Did you have to put and more on the end? As if that weren't enough.
Right.
And she's also the author of 3 books, an advocate and thought leader for collaborative practices in Agile contexts. And I asked her the same question: was there a particular point of view that the audience might like to know about? And interestingly, she said no. She said no, there is no black or white answer. That she takes a pragmatic approach to things, and maybe it depends. Is that fair?
Good enough to start.
Next to Ellen is Matt Kaplan, Senior Vice President of Products at LogMeIn. And Matt ran a 400-person global product and engineering team supporting a diverse set of customers and products, and helped drive LogMeIn's adoption of Agile and Lean principles over the last 3 years. So we have the outsider coach, we have the insider in the trenches, and we have the planning from top-down perspective here. He says his experience is largely in getting Agile to work at scale across geographic boundaries, which I'm sure a lot of people in this room have struggled with. I asked him, what was his perspective, and he said 2 things that I'm really curious about how he will reconcile. Because he said, number one, the trope we've all heard about product managers is that they should be thought of as the CEO of the product. Everybody's heard that concept once or twice before. But he also said, to manage at scale, we've created multiple roles with equal levels of responsibility. A business owner, a product owner, and a development owner. So maybe the CEO is the CEO of all 3 of those, or maybe he's just one of them, he or she, so we'll find out from that. And at the end of the panel here is Piyum Samaraweera. It says I said it right. VP of Product Management here at Constant Contact. So his commute here was the most arduous of all of this. Piyum has been working with Agile since the early 2000s. You were doing XP back then? Is that what you? Yeah. At Thomson Financial, now Thomson Reuters. And he's been working on both Kanban and Scrum at numerous companies, including Carbonite, Sophos, and Period Contact. And I asked him about a particular point of view, and I really liked his answer. He said, Agile is like religion. Everybody has strong feelings about it. Everybody believes in their particular religion. But like some of our other panelists, he says he takes a pragmatic approach, and maybe it's not so much about your particular religion as it is about people coming together to figure out what works for them. Maybe some of you will disagree with that. But we shall see. Did I see somebody raise their hand when I said that? No? All right. So let me introduce myself. I'm Bruce McCarthy. I've been in product development in one shape or form for over 20 years, mostly in product management, but also I've been in business development, I've been in engineering management, I've been a Scrum Master, I've been a product owner. I started off my life in Waterfall in packaged software and then later in enterprise software, and I became a convert about 6 years ago now. And have led Agile transformations at multiple companies, including ATG, Oracle, Hobson's, I have to look at my own list, Alir, and NetProspects, where I was Vice President of Products for 2 years. I'm currently on my third startup. We're building a tool for product managers called REQS, R-E-Q-Q-S, if you care to check it out, to help with prioritization and road mapping. No, roadmaps are not a dirty word in the Agile parlance. And I also do mentoring and coaching for product development teams. One of the things that I run across often in managing or helping product teams is that a lot of people come to the table with a different set of assumptions, a different set of languages, maybe a different religion, very different points of view. And whether you're the product owner or the product manager, many times your job is to translate or be the diplomat between the warring factions. Does that sound familiar to many people in this room? Sometimes people would say much more therapist, but it's one of those in-between kind of roles in any case. So does anybody know the story about the lost balloonist? One or two people? Well, for the benefit of the rest of the room, I will tell the story. So a balloonist, a man in a hot air balloon, decides he's going to meet a friend of his at the state fair today. He calls his friend on the phone, says, I'm going to meet you at the state fair, I'm going to fly my balloon there. Gets up in the balloon, is on his way to the state fair, and pretty soon realizes he's lost. Obviously, the GPS is not working on his phone. But he spots in a field a man standing all alone where he can get down to him with the balloon. He lowers the balloon down to within shouting distance of the man and asks, hey, I told my friend I would meet him at the state fair and I'm lost. Can you help me? Can you tell me where I am? And the person on the ground says, shouts back up to him, you are in a hot air balloon floating approximately 50 meters above the ground, and he even gives him the longitude and latitude of exactly precisely where he is. And the guy in the balloon says, you must be an engineer. And the man on the ground says, yes, I am. How did you know? And he says, because I've asked you for help, and everything that you have told me, while technically true, is completely useless. I'm still lost. And the man on the ground pauses for a moment, thinks about it, and says, you must be in marketing. And the man in the balloon says, yeah, how did you guess? And he says, because you have made promises you have no idea how to keep. I have done everything you have asked, and somehow the fact that you're lost is my fault. And I thought that was a pretty good illustration of sometimes the difference in the way thinking and speaking happens between different disciplines, between the business side and the technical side, between the marketing side and the development side. And so the first question actually I want to throw up for the panel is, does that reflect the difference, the key difference between the product owner and the product manager? Is the product manager the marketing guy who sets out the goals but doesn't have any idea how we're going to get there? And is the product owner more closely aligned with the development team that's got to figure out how we're going to get there? So I don't know if any one of you wants to grab that one first. Matt, you look animated. What do you think, Vanessa?
So I would say that for the product manager and the product owner, I think it's necessary that, I guess let me go back into my background a little bit. So you had mentioned that within an organization, a lot of times I've been asked to do both the product manager and the product owner role. I think while there's some benefit to that, as a product manager, you don't have to communicate and make sure the product owner understands what the objectives are and understands the market, and there's benefit to that. I think that there's also a compromise that's being made. So if you're spending time acting as product owner, that's also taking away time acting as product manager. So I think while, again, there's benefits, I think it's necessary to make sure that we understand at what point is someone responsible for communicating on the day-to-day? At what point do we say that there's enough work and enough going on that it's necessary to have someone act as a product manager? And then how big of an organization does it still make sense to keep those two roles somewhat combined?
All right. Anybody want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned before, operating at scale and across geographies is a difficult challenge, right? So we've been able to actually create a product owner team. And the product owner team has a product, sort of the lead product owner, happens to be based in Boston, which is our corporate headquarters, and he or she interacts with the marketing team, the other teams, finance and sales. But in Budapest, Hungary, where we have over 300 engineers, we have product owners on the ground. And they work as part of a team with the product owner. They actually report to the product owner in Boston. So we call them all product owners, if you will. And as you mentioned before, we have actually 3 roles. So we have a product owner team, we have a business owner team, who's sort of responsible for the business milestones of the product, the analytics of it, the funnel, looking at it. As a SaaS product, you need to understand all that. And then we have a development owner role, which is actually more of a traditional engineering function. But the difference here is that we're all operating as a team. And we've kind of broken down the traditional barriers between product and engineering to actually work under one sort of product team structure. So that's different as well.
And you've got those 3 different roles. Is there a hierarchy there? Do they all report to a person?
Actually, no. So the key thing here was we said we can't have a hierarchy. It's a triangle. It's 3 legs of the stool. And in doing that, we've created a balance. Now, there is somebody that sits above, a director that sits above. And the role of that person is actually to keep the spirit and the soul of the product. They need to be the CEO. That is the CEO.
That's the CEO role.
Exactly.
That title is director of what?
Director of products for that particular product.
Okay.
For joint ID, for example.
And then under that, for that particular product, under that person, that director of product, is those 3 roles.
Those 3 roles, right.
So acknowledging what Matt said, and scale I think is really important, but one of the things for me is we come out of the womb, and what's the first thing our parents are looking for us to do? It's to talk, right? And in my heart of hearts, in terms of building product, and we can get into scale on it, by the way, I love what Bob-Ann and Matt have done. I fundamentally believe that the conversation in Scrum is paramount, especially if you're an organization which is just moving to Scrum. So I have a strong point of view that the person having that conversation with the customer, understanding what their environment looks like, what their needs, their wishes are, needs to be that same person having the conversation with the engineering team. Acknowledging as you scale that might change, but early on in your journey, especially if you're building a V1 product or you're early on in Scrum, it has to be one role, and for me, it's got to be the product manager.
So you're saying that that translator role between the two worlds, customer and development team, is what you want a product person to be doing. Is that right?
Correct. I mean, I acknowledge that it's a ton of work. The other thing that I fundamentally believe is product managers, what distinguishes a good from a great product manager is their work ethic. And I think it's part of what their DNA. They will outwork people. But yeah, that conversation is critical, especially, like I said, if you're early on in Scrum or you're building a D1 or you're reinventing something.
So that in-between role, that translator role, the one who is talking both to the customers and to the development team, do you call that a product manager or a product owner, or does it not matter?
I don't think it matters, and we've used the term interchangeably at Constant Contact. For me, it's really about who's having dialogue with the customer is the same person who's having dialogue with engineering, quality assurance, about customer support, finance, etc.
Ellen, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I've seen all kinds of patterns in how this is structured. I think it's really great stories that we're hearing and Matt describing the structure that you have. When you look at what product manager does, they are responsible for the product throughout its whole life cycle. And when you think about a product owner and look at the Scrum Guide definition, I'm not going to quote it exactly, but it talks about being in charge, if you will, of the value of the product and the work of the development team, which I've seen interpreted in many organizations as being very inward or downstream development delivery focus. And one of the issues that a lot of development teams end up having is that they don't have the bigger view necessarily from that quote product owner, if that is truly the title. So product management is huge, and in some ways the Agile community needs to recognize that it's more than just the delivery work that needs to be done. There's a whole life cycle of product and launch, sales, marketing, competitive intelligence, and sharing that. One of the things that is important for if you are going to have that role of product owner is sharing that information with the development team so that they understand the product and really focusing on the big V word. I mean, Agile, everybody's talking about value, value, value. Who is really in charge of mining that value and helping the team focus and optimize value is that product champion. That's actually the preferred term that we like to use, product champion.
Okay. So are you saying, though, that product manager, who you're saying is managing sort of the whole life cycle of the product and not just what's being built now, is ideally a separate role than the product owner? I think
it will depend on the patterns that I've seen that will work differently. It will depend on, is your product a commercial product, or are you using product ownership and product management in a IT, products or applications that run the business. That's one factor. Also the size of the organization. So you really just want the product manager in a startup and a very small organization.
Now you started off being very categorical in your answer. Now you're being wishy-washy.
Wishy-washy, right? But actually, a lot of our clients are really large clients, and one person their products are very large, very complex. They may have regulatory aspects to them. There's a very complex ecosystem that doesn't just involve software, that may involve mechanics, electrical, engineering, etc. And one person managing a single backlog for multiple teams, it's really, really hard to do. So building different structures like what Matt is talking about, having feature teams or teams that are managing parts of the backlog that deal with one part of the experience or the product is a wise thing to do, because it's impossible for one person to be able to handle all of that.
I've heard the idea that one person can really excel at all of the engineering-facing tasks and all of the market-facing tasks and all the business strategy tasks all at once is like hunting for a unicorn. It can be a challenge to find that one person who can do all of it really well. Sounds like Piyum has a comment.
Yeah, just a comment on that. I think there's also, one thing with product owner and product managers is also product marketing. Depending on the organization, here at Constant Contact, we're a really strong product marketing organization who, a lot of the market-facing side of the product is done there. It's done in conjunction with the product management team. So the less of a burden. Again, I think it's a structural. It's where you are in your conversation. You did have something, Ellen, which I think is really critical, and another reason why I think, again, whatever we call the role, whoever's having the conversation with engineering, there's little b, there's big B, right? There's viable and valuable. I fundamentally think that there's another level, and it's something we've been talking about recently, is that there's minimum awesome product. I don't think I've coined that. I think that's been out there for a while. And I think the person who has had the conversation with the customer has been having lived what they're going through is the person who's going to come up with awesome.
So that's your argument for tying the roles as tightly together as possible so that the team gets the message directly from, or as directly as possible from the people with pain. So that seems to be different than what you were saying, Vanessa, when we started this off about how when you collapse those roles, sometimes there are things you miss. Can you describe a little bit about what gets missed when the roles are collapsed?
So the reality with a lot of the roles I've had at different organizations is, one, there's no clear understanding of what product management is, which is problem number one. The other problem is the teams aren't big enough where they can clearly divide those roles or be able to divide those roles just given the resources at hand. So that being said, it makes things a little bit more difficult, and I guess it's in context of the size of the organization. I know you were mentioning at scale you could probably add in additional people to take on various aspects, but at least from my experience, it does seem that one, education needs to be part of the conversation, just understanding what each person on the team is supposed to be doing, what piece they really own, and then also just understanding when you have that person in that role, clearly understanding what their deliverables are. So I've been on the same team. I've been a scrum master, I've been a project manager, product owner, product manager, so you can see when you have a daily stand-up, I tend to argue with myself a lot, but I also tend to compromise pretty well. So
You actually bring in multiple hats.
yeah, so it definitely is a challenge, and that's why I was saying if you have a product manager on that team and they're also acting as product owner, there is a compromise that's being made. You can't have that healthy tension in the room. I understand the point about if the product manager is both the technical side and the business side, then it allows the communication to happen appropriately. But what that says to me is if you have someone technical facing and you have someone more business facing, just make sure that the channel is up where they can make that communication happen. And that should avoid some of those issues that you can encounter.
Very good. So different points of view really on how similar or how overlapping these roles are. I'd like to, as much as possible, take your questions. And we have some people with microphones around. Raise your hand if you have a question for the panel. First one I saw was back here.
So you started to make the distinction that if you're using Agile to support internally facing, running the business type products, you get a different view than if it's a commercial product. Can you just explain more what pattern works best for either?
Well, first, I don't know there's a single pattern, but one of the observations for Agile and product ownership, product management, and an internal, for a product that is internally supporting the business, the running of the operation of the business, there is typically not going to be a marketing organization. There's not going to be the concern about sales. Launch, well, what does launch mean? That really means change control, kind of. So the concerns are more inward facing than external facing. So in a large organization, for example, one of our clients, they have a chief product owner and then multiple product owners that are co-located with the engineering teams. And the chief product owner is, let's say, stakeholder managing, if you will. You still have the issue of a massively huge backlog and competing priorities. The competing priorities come from within the organization as opposed to a larger customer base. The research still needs to be done, but typically is not necessarily done as well as it would be for a commercial product. Does that help a little bit?
Have any of the rest of you worked on an internal IT product, and you can add to that? You know, I've coached a few teams with that situation, and the stakeholder management tasks are, if anything, even worse internally. But I'll just say I agree on everything else that you said. Questions? I want to go this way, and I'll be right back.
I would like to beg to differ that with an IT program, you still do have marketing in a sense, especially if you're overhauling, you know, an application. You've got to have a group going out there and selling it to the, you know, to the end users for adoption, right? So you might still need a product manager type role to, you know, manage the roadmap. You know, when are the big features going to be rolled out? You know, in what order, and that sort of thing, as opposed to, you know, product owner who's focused on the agile process and the Scrum process.
I think I probably agree, but that's what I meant by change control or change management. So it may not be called marketing, but who are going to be the recipients of the change? Are they ready to, their worlds are going to be rocked. Their worlds are, you know, when we deliver product, we're changing people's lives. So marketing in not the classical sense of marketing and change management. And I think that's a really great point that you make about the roadmap. One of the things that a lot of internal IT organizations do not do and are starting to, you know, ratchet up their understanding is they need to look at those applications as assets, as products, and think of the roadmap of the product. That have they reached their maturity? Do they need to be retired? How do we replace them? And really look at the, quote, users, you know, users, you know, back in the day, the term user, I think it was Ed Jordan way back, showing my gray hair here, said that the only other industry that called its customers users was the illegal drug trade. So let's think about those internal customers truly as customers and use some of the good practices in commercial product management where we do research and we think about the experience and we think about personas and we have empathy for our customers. That needs to be done internally, and that can be a differentiator for some organizations.
Great, thank you. More questions?
Hi.
Got one here. Oh, go there next.
So it seems as if I learned the pragmatic methodology a few years ago, and now it seems it's more of a hodgepodge. And it seems that depending on the size of the company, if you're B2C, if you're internal, or B2B, maybe you have a different structure. Is there anybody trying to figure out what the standardization should be or the best practices? And if not, can we do it here?
Great question. Should there even be standardization?
So we tried standardization across all of our product teams, and I would say that it didn't work all that well. That even within the same company, we have different customers, different customer types, different cadence, different rhythm to the product cycle. You've got products that require, you know, have rapid engineering, continuous delivery all the way through. Products that are on more 3-month, 6-month cycles. So all of these changes really, I think, go into what is the right structure for the team. And going back to the other comment before, it really is about, you know, forget the roles, forget who's responsible for this function, that function, but look at all the tasks you have to get done. Somebody has to create a roadmap, somebody has to create a strategy, somebody has to go out and visit customers, somebody has to actually, you know, work with the engineering team on a day-to-day basis and answer the hard questions. Somebody's got to make decisions about what we do, what we don't do. And if you list all those things, and you say, okay, then who on the team is going to actually handle these, right? And come up with the way we're doing it is we adapt the team and look at all the things and say, okay, where are we short on? What types of skill sets do we need on the team to add? Somebody's really great with customer interviews. Okay, let's add them to the team. So the product owner function, really, a product manager or a product owner, whatever you call it, again, it's a team game for us. And it's really, it's Bill Belichick, do your job, right? It's everybody has a role, but the jobs could change sprint to sprint, right?
Does that sometimes, though, that adaptability lead to what Vanessa was talking about, where as a product manager, you're not really sure what the boundaries of your role are. And you could be wearing 7 different hats all on the same day, all in the same meeting. Because there aren't a set of rules. Is that a worry, or does that not happen in your experience?
Yeah, I think there are rules, but I think those two get a little bit they're adapted by the products and by the people as well. I mean, the Agile rules still apply. The Agile principles still apply, right? Communications is critical, right, to this. It's trust, when we trust each other, right? I firmly believe that in more of the models of self-management that's happening. I don't know if anyone's read the book BPMA Organizations. It's a great book. It talks about kind of the principles that Zappos is applying across all of their company. They just, Zappos, I don't know if you know this, but they just said to all their managers in the company is find another job or leave, because there's no more. They flatten the entire organization. It's entirely team-based. So the principles I think that are emerging seem to be much more self-management, in the Agile sense, but apply to the whole company.
Fantastic. Anybody have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just quickly, I think Matt brought up a lot of great points, and one of the areas of friction is exactly what you're talking about. I've seen teams spend an enormous amount of time trying to structure how the team, who does what in the team. If you can go back to the DNA of the team, the respect and the communication, and really that shared vision of where you're trying to go, you'll get there. And I think sometimes this need to have boundaries on what people do gets in our way. So I think it's more about if you have a true north, right? And I would submit that the product owner, product manager has to help you with that true north. If the team has the communication skills, the team has the respect, the team has the camaraderie, they'll get there.
All right, now I know we have more questions in the audience, but I think that may have been a controversial statement. So is there anybody who would like to raise their hand and come up with a disagreement on that we should have more standardization or guidelines about these roles?
I do.
All right.
But not standardization per se. I agree with you guys, except that there needs to be transparent communications about some of those boundaries. So, and that doesn't have to be a long conversation or anything complicated, but a team, for example, one team I work with, all right, the product owner, and they use that role, who is a product manager, she was responsible for the backlog. But could anybody put anything in the backlog on the development team? Was that okay? Well, that was the question. They needed to discuss it, and they did in about 6 minutes, and they had a working agreement. And that was part of what we did in chartering the team and also envisioning the product. So I think that teams do need to explicitly have those conversations. And then when sometimes somebody steps in and does something, which is usually going to be good for the good of the team, then we need to say, yay, thank you for that. Do we need to talk about any boundary changes or anything like that? I just think that we need to be a little bit more transparent about it. That's all, and explicit about it.
So he was describing a kind of a more democratic process. You were both describing a kind of a team-oriented, bottom-up process, and it sounds like you support that. Explicit rules, but agreed to by the team as opposed to imposed from above.
Yeah, I mean, teams don't automatically go to performing. Many of you know the cycle of forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning. There is that last activity. And teams don't automatically, collaboration just doesn't happen automatically. It needs to be engineered to some extent into the team's work. And so let's not forget about doing that. And then the team can make smart standards and adapt them as they go and learn and build product and figure out really what is valuable.
Does anybody have a counterpoint to that? And then we'll come to your question in a moment. Not a controversial statement? Counterpoint to it? No? All right. So,
can I just throw out one other thing? So, listening to you talk, Alan, that's great. I think The other word that I throw out there, which I think is really important, is vulnerable. I think.
What was the question?
No, just throwing out the word vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
In terms of my teams. I think you hit on something really important, which is as you learn, you adapt. But I think we have all have to be vulnerable in that team and really be candid when we don't know all the answers, and to surface that and things like the retrospective, being able to actually internalize as a team and then go forth from there.
Great, vulnerable. So you got the mic. Question in the back.
Hi. I like what Vanessa was saying. When you have a product owner and like an engineering owner, there better be strong communication channels. So this question actually then goes to Matt. When you have multiple owners, as you had described, who makes the call for prioritization? That's the first question. And the second question is going to be, what are the techniques and practices that you might use to achieve prioritization?
Okay, so first of all, the product owner team, the product owner structure is still responsible for the prioritization of the backlog. Right? So that's still the case. But they don't describe the how, right? That's a fundamental difference, I think, between good product managers and bad product managers, right? Good product managers describe why, the mission. What are we trying to accomplish? They give the goal to the team, right? They set the goal, they plant the flag, and they say, this is what we're trying to achieve. And the how we do it is really a development function. Yeah.
So I'm going to challenge you again, because you didn't really answer my question. So you have a product owner configuration, group of folks, who are the team. Who makes the prioritization call?
Right.
If it is,
The product owner.
It's
The product owner.
Okay, product owner.
Like the product owner, now there's a team, right? So there's, as I said before, there's when you look at all the things that the product management function is way more, you said before, way more work than one person can do, right? So the product owner structure does have a hierarchy in it, where the person on the street, in the stand-ups, actually work with the product owner, and product manager function, product owner. So we don't actually have product managers, we just call them the product owner team. But it's the product owner, not the development owner, not the business owner, who makes that decision.
And then back to the second question, are there certain techniques that they use to help with prioritization? Because I'm sure there's lots of stuff coming in.
Yeah, so we actually, we discovered along the way that, even prior to this before, that a lot of engineers say, well, you know, we have a lot of debt. We have to pay down our debt. Well, how do we get our stuff in the backlog? And then you have, user services or customer support yelling and saying, we have all these problems on the customer side. How do we get our stuff in the backlog, right? So we've actually created a structure to allow scoring of the backlog according to all the other stakeholders that are in the company, including marketing, support, sales, and engineering, so that they actually get their things prioritized as well. So there is again, product owner is the one that sets the roadmap and also establishes the priority of the backlog. But part of the stakeholder is the engineering team.
Does any of the rest of you have a point of view on prioritization that you'd like to share?
I want to understand your methodology better because I think it's great. I think also there is a subjective aspect to it, right? Because I think the product manager, in the case of, I'll use a voice of customer feedback we get in, it could be the #1 piece of feedback from our customer support desk. We go down and click further. Why is it? Because it's taking the longest amount of time. It's not the most customer important. So, that the product manager who's on the ground who knows that, who can see that this is, I've seen these customers before. I know when they're calling. We'll know that right away. So I think that's also important, the subjective aspect of prioritization.
One of the things I like to say is that the most important question a product manager can ask is why, about any request. What are you trying to accomplish? What's the help?
Yeah, and I love the scoring technique because I think that is a really good weighted criteria matrix, and scoring matrices are really powerful. There's a lot of different prioritization techniques out there. Some of you probably know about the Kano model, for example, where you try to make trying to make your, the value, the goals quantifiable using things like language. There's a lot of really good techniques. The key is to get the right people conversing about transparently who is, you know, I like to say that value is in the eyes of the beholder. So we first need to know who those different beholders are. Matt, you were talking about, you know, sales, marketing, and engineering. Who are those people? And at different points in time, what the value considerations of those people are. And we like to think of them as partners, from the business, from the customer, and from the technology realms. We need to be explicit on what their value considerations are and be transparent about it. We're going to use a scoring technique and return to it, because as time marches on, the market changes, we learn more about the product, we may have to go back and change our prioritization, you know, decisions. So that's an ongoing activity.
Fantastic. If anyone's interested, I have a whole SlideShare on prioritization techniques under my name, Bruce McCarthy, on SlideShare. There's some good techniques you can leverage out there. Vanessa, did you have something to add to that?
Already, not really.
Not on that one?
Yeah.
All right. Now, I know we've had a question waiting down here for a while. Somebody have the mic? Great.
Sure. I'll throw out a stereotype and you tell me if it's valid or not. That classical product managers tend to think in terms of releases, 6-month periods, plans and commitments over a longer period of time. Product owners, agile, change on a dime, every sprint, continuous input, let's change things as quickly as possible. Is that a valid stereotype? And if so, how do you deal with it?
Great question. Not a stacked question at all. Vanessa, you want to take that as a start?
Sure. I think while that to some degree is a good definition, at the same time, a product owner can't be so short-sighted. They have to also understand those longer-term goals and visions so that they can make the right decisions when it matters. So while they may have those focuses, I think in a lot of ways, just going back to opening that channel of communication, the product owner has to be in a lot of ways on the same page as the product manager as the product manager continues to move forward.
So a little bit of both. Cool.
Yeah, I think that that's a common thing at the very beginning when teams are first transitioning to Agile, that they're very focused on when engineering development is using Agile for the first time or fairly new to it, it's a really different way of working. So they're very focused on, okay, let's try to get, if they're using Scrum or iterations, fixed iterations, let's try to deliver on time, with as less debt as we can. And so they're focused with their heads down on the immediate deliverables. What the pattern that I sometimes see, and I'm sure a lot of other coaches see this, is that usually after 3 or 4 iterations, the team starts to get some predictability. And they pick up their heads and they say, where are we going? What's our goal? What's our vision? Do we have our release plan, our roadmap? Now, ideally, the product person, the product champion, is already doing that, and thinking about that and starting to communicate that with the team. But often engineering and development are so focused on learning these getting some fluency with just focusing on value, that they're sometimes even not really ready for the bigger picture.
What do you guys think?
So we've done a lot of experimentation, right? So first of all, being a public company, you need to have a roadmap, right? So somebody, you have to answer to somebody that says, hey, this is what we're going to build, and this is the value we think we're going to get from it. So no doubt, you need to have a function in an organization that's thinking long term, right? Beyond, not even just 6 months, but 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, right? You have that vision. And then at the same time, you need to have somebody that's focused near term, right? So it's something that's working spring after spring. So one case we decided recently that we had to do a particular feature, and we said, let's just throw out kind of the process, and the feature will launch when it launches, but we want to get it right. And we just basically said, forget the roadmap for a second, forget the date that we think we're going to get it. Let's iterate until we actually get it right. And we gave the team a mission. And this is where I go back to like the vision, the mission, and team orientation, right? If you give the team a mission and a goal, For example, one of the goals was 0 defects. Join Me has a recording feature. You can record an online meeting, and it says, okay, your team is 0 defects, no defects. And they iterated and iterated until they got to 0. Instead of doing the other way, which is, here's the 10 more bugs, here's the 10 more bugs. But because they had the mission, they were so invested in it that they did it probably in about half the time we thought it would have, because they own the mission. So what's really important, I think, is to get the engineering team to really understand the mission. What are they trying to accomplish? And then own it.
Very good. Neil?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Matt said. I think the last piece is critical for me. I think, well, I was at Intuit, and one of the key things that I continue to think is that Steve Bennett was CEO at the time. In the first presentation, I sat and said, everybody in the organization has to know their true north. And that's something that I to this day, and part of my team rolls over every time I say, what is your true north? But if everybody knows their true north, you will normalize and you'll figure what is the correct path forward.
Cool. Brian, more questions, Brian?
So I'm going to expand a little bit on the question that was asked back here. So in whatever form of some sort of product ownership team, whether it's one person customer facing, one person engineering facing, or there's some sort of 3-person team like you've explained, I feel like we've run into 2 problems, and I'm wondering if you've experienced it and what you've done about it. One problem is really ownership of priorities, where if, say, there's a team, you end up maybe having essentially an unempowered product owner because you're not really sure who really sets the priorities, or the team doesn't know who to ask. And even if you stated it's really this person that owns the priorities, maybe they don't feel empowered to make that decision without their better half or whatever. So there's one problem we've run into of ownership of priorities when there's a team. And secondly, there's almost like a siloed ownership of value, where maybe one person is really owning the customer-facing value, one person's really owning like the marketing value of it, one person's really owning like the I don't know, the quality value, and then it becomes, once again, like separate people owning certain values instead of one. So hopefully this is all making sense. Have you run into these problems with these product ownership teams, and have you addressed them?
It is making sense. I've seen some similar things in different places where, as you said, the product owner officially keeps the backlog and the prioritization, but they know that the engineering team owns the compiler. And if the engineering team tells them, I'm sorry, we got to work on technical debt this week, they kind of feel like their hands are tied. Matt, you mentioned you've got a business owner role. And I could see a scenario, maybe it doesn't happen in your company, where the business owner says, my job is to make sure that sales has what we need to sell, and so I'm changing direction, which is temporary, really. So I wonder, Matt, I'd love it if you could weigh in on this and maybe clarify a little bit those 3 different roles and how their 3 different sets of responsibilities come together.
Yeah, okay, so let's see. The business owner function, you could really think of it as business operations, right? So they're at the controls of what's happening with the business. They can see in real time with a SaaS product, and I assume most of our products are software oriented. But actually interested, who has a SaaS product? Who's working on SaaS? Okay.
Maybe.
And then how about just installed, behind the firewall products, enterprise stuff? Yeah. What about hardware? Any hardware? Okay. So it's really important for the business owner to have see what's happening in the business, so they can actually see entirely through the whole funnel, right? How many clicks we're getting on the website? How many of those clicks are converting to registrations? How many of those registrations are turning into trials, how many of those trials are turning into quality trials, how many of those quality trials are turning into business, right? So the business owner has a detailed view of that function. They also are looking at the market and the market as a whole, competitors as well, and understanding, okay, where do we want to take the product from the business perspective, financial perspective? Does the product actually make business sense, financial sense? Whereas the product owner is more traditionally the keeper of the CEO of the product, or the product champion. I use that word as well. So they're the product champion. They understand the vision, and they can articulate that vision pretty well throughout the whole company, internally and externally. And their job is not just to manage the backlog, not just to set the priority, but their job is to inspire, right? They're trying to get their teams to understand what we're trying to accomplish as a team. And so some of the surprises that happen when it clicks is the engineering team actually did something that you didn't expect, you didn't ask for, but was spot on, was perfect. It's because think of it as a football team or basketball team where the person was in exactly the right spot, changed course direction just as the ball was thrown, right? It's because they working as a team, they can sense that. So that's, I would berate an engineering team who actually changed course in that case, if it was on mission, on plan. I would say, thank you, great job, let's keep going.
Ellen, can I ask you to weigh in on this? What's the difference between a company where, an organization where the teams act in the way Matt is describing, where they naturally are acting in concert as a team, like a sports team, and a company like Brian described where nobody's quite sure who really owns the priority list, because although someone officially owns it, it can be changed from outside control at any time. You've worked with many companies. What is the determining factor of which way we go?
Well, I don't know if there's any one determining factor, but in that siloed situation, that sounds very painful and sad, that there's not clarity about the vision of the product and who the customers are overall, and perhaps there's not good leadership around. I mean, all of their needs, all of those siloed needs are valid, but you can't have everything. Sometimes when you think about a lot of product management is about deciding what not to do, based on what as you're talking about, the vision and the mission of the team is. So strong leadership is needed, strong product leadership is needed, and a strong collaboration with engineering and development is needed. With those teams that are doing what Bruce was talking about, what you were talking about, Matt, which is like a beautiful thing, where you have really well-formed teams and they truly are acting, in concert with each other, whatever sport you want to talk about. That's a team-based sport. There's usually they've probably gone through some bumpy times, and they've been able to transparently discuss and argue and learn how they best adapt. And one of my points is that just doesn't happen automatically. We have to do some work to make that happen, and strong leadership is needed, transparency, building, doing some simple things like chartering or lifting off of the team, doing ongoing retrospectives, and really being serious about it and not blocking product people out. I think, in the Scrum world, that chicken pig thing is really bad, and it's done a disservice. The product owners can't be in the retros. I mean, that's baloney. That's
so
crazy.
Brian, you get to go back to the office and tell your bosses they're doing it wrong. Ellen said so.
I already did that.
We've had a question for a while in the back there. Yep.
Yeah, so mine's more of a comment. So we've been spending a fair amount of time talking about the difference between the product management role, the product owner role. One thing that I find sort of non-intuitive, I think back, we just taken some Scrum training here internally, and I was like, I think one of the things we learned about is when, as a product manager, product owner, whoever it is that's trying to define value and breaking up big pieces of work into value for the customer, slice by slice, you don't slice the pie across, you slice deep, right? You go from top all the way to the bottom of the cake or the pie, and to find that there is a thinking that the product manager wouldn't be the person who is the one person who is talking to customers, who understands the problem statement and the value that you need to provide to them, and being that one person who is doing the stand-ups, doing the day-to-day, sort of doing that product owner role, to divide it amongst two people, feels like you're losing value. It feels like it's the wrong slice. And if it's a problem of scale, I would just get more product managers who do the end-to-end. Each one owns their slice.
You're arguing for the end-to-end so that the full perspective of all the stakeholders is being brought directly into the team.
And there's no loss in translation between the two people, perhaps, that are dealing with the day-to-day versus the bigger vision.
So similar to what Piyum was saying at the beginning, that you want that person who's representing the market on the team to have the unfiltered view.
Yeah.
Right, right. Does anybody here have something they want to come back to that? You some worry about that? I know we talked about it a little already.
Yeah, that really worries me.
All right, tell us.
Again, I think the product owner's role is to facilitate conversations between customers and engineers. That's one of their roles as well. So we try to bring our voice of the customer directly to the engineering team as much as possible. Whether it's they're coming out, we have, as I said, 300 engineers in Budapest. We fly them out here often. We go to customer visits. They sit on support calls. It's so important that they understand and engage directly with the customers. Trying to control this through structure, through process, through rigid role formation, I think is for me, it doesn't work. And I think we've moved beyond that. That in true Agile fashion, we are adapting our team structure on the fly in terms of every sprint, every quarter, if you will, right? So it's important to keep doing that.
What I think I'm hearing, though, is that you guys are both trying to solve the same problem. You're both, all three of you actually, you're all trying to get as much of an unfiltered view into the team as possible. You're saying don't split it among multiple product manager-like roles. You're saying actually have multiple people exposed to the customer. Does that sound right, Piyum?
Yeah, I think I see both viewpoints, right? But I think one of the critical things are where you are in a journey. The comment was just taking Scrum training, right? And at this point in the conversation between the engineering team moving to Scrum, the product management team moving to Scrum, this is where that conversation from one person is really important to me. And I think I can see move on as you go to scale, but really making sure that the person who had that conversation with the customer is the person who's defining that thin slice of functionality through the pie is really critical.
Looks like we have strong opinion in the back here. Am I right?
Thanks, Bruce. I just want to make a comment in terms of what we do and how it applies to some of the comments that are being shared. First of all, I just like to say I like what Matt's saying a lot about understanding individual roles. What does a product manager do? Someone has to do the strategy, someone has to be talking to the customers. Somebody has to design the product. There's product designers on the team as well. And they're engaged, and typically they should be engaged with the customers as well. So the concept of the Agile teams that we have in our company are focused on just that. It's a team that not just one person owns that, plays that part in bringing this value into the team. The product manager obviously is the one that's most customer facing. They have the final call, final decision making. I say people are asking, who makes the final decision? The product manager makes that decision. But we use the word product owner as a shared role. It's not one person. We have the product owner is a hat that is worn by many people because it depends on what those stories are about. It depends on what's in the backlog. In some cases, I want my product designer to wear the product owner hat because he has a lot of insight. We talk a lot. I spend a lot of time. My product managers speak a lot with the product designers, and we're all building this product together. So they understand the priorities too. So there comes times when it's very appropriate for the product designer to wear that product owner hat. And that's how we share that responsibility, so it's not a bottleneck in who owns what. It's much more fluid, as Alan's been saying.
When that hat gets passed around, what powers does that person suddenly inherit? Can they change the prioritization of the backlog if they are product owner for a day?
See, the question about prioritization is often made at a team level. So, but the final decision is the product manager. They take input from every stakeholder. The product manager makes that final call. So during the sprint, the question can come up, and the question is, well, who answers that question? And it's that individual who is that product owner at the time who wrote the story. If they're the individual who wrote the story, contributed to the backlog, they should be the one answering the question.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I just want to make sure that my opinion is I go a little further than that. When we're talking about a team structure and product manager, the designer, product marketing, architect, that's embedded. So But at the end of the day, the product manager is prioritizing. You're right. If there is a story, and we're doing our story correctly, do the card, conversation, confirmation. In that conversation, the designer might be leading the conversation. The product manager has prioritized it, but the designer has the hat on and is saying, well, the IA, the interaction needs to be a little bit like this, based upon their knowledge of the customer.
Vanessa, what do you think? Does this sound like chaos?
No, I agree that if someone wrote the story, they should be the one to answer the questions. I also agree that there needs to be someone actually determining what the priority is. Going back again to smaller companies, you may have, I don't know how many people work at small companies, but you might have a limited engineering team, and that engineering team might be doing all the projects or a number of projects or crossing those projects at some point in time. That being said, if an issue comes in from customer support or one of the users, there's something that has to go up on the website for marketing purposes, and you have one front-end guy doing the work, you now have to say, okay, we have this project in motion, we know these issues are coming in, they may be key zeros, maybe system may be down, we have to redirect our attention. You really get into the battle of, product manager might be making those decisions, but it really has to be informed from a lot of different people, and you start to deprioritize things that maybe have had higher priority and have to challenge as needed. And this is, I'm going outside of Agile a little bit here, but you start to break outside of some of those cycles, those pre-planned cycles, just because you have a limited team and you have to make these changes and you have to address them for the value of the business and the customer at that point in time. So I think just in general around prioritization and ownership, it's much more of a dynamic environment, and there's no necessarily, you had mentioned, no real black and white, and it's in context. You have to constantly be, evaluating things sometimes in the moment. Going back to product manager and product owner, them being the same person, it makes things just a little bit easier, but it is something that's more fluid, more dynamic.
So when you get big, you still have those problems. You have the same problems. You have not enough resources. You have 400 people. You still don't have enough resources to deal with marketing issues as well as engineering issues. But two examples. I think what I've learned is so critical is that you build trust in the team, and that they understand each other and they can empathize with each other. And so sometimes we switch hats, right? So for example, we created a story owner idea, right? So at some point, we said, okay, an engineer could be the story owner, and you go through the process of a product owner, but from the perspective of that one little story. And they can see now from their side, well, what is it like to have to manage stakeholder requirements, right? What is it like? So they get to wear each other's shoes, right? The other thing that we've done is we did a worldwide hackathon. It was our first hackathon last year, and it was an experiment. We didn't know how it was going to work, and our thinking was, hopefully that the engineers given no direction, basically said, just think about our customers, any one of our customers. Could you come up with an idea that actually would be useful for them? And so no product managers were allowed to be involved, no product owners. It was all engineering driven. And it turned out we actually, not only did the winning team of the hackathon, it was done in August, the winning team was announced in September, and we just launched that product in this last quarter, and it was the fastest time to market we've ever had on a product. And logging in from concept design all the way through, and it was initiated by engineering.
So there you have it. Get the product owners out of the system and everything will go faster.
No problem.
We've had John wanting to ask a question for a while.
This may echo a lot of what's already been said, but as engineers, we always crave relevance, right? We don't want to find ourselves having created the most glorious architecture in the world, only to discover it's a castle in the air and has something to do with what we really sell. But my experience, I've found that product owner tends to faithfully fulfill the role as being that conduit of information about what the customer wants to buy. But what can happen is the product manager winds up being the conduit for information about what the business wants to sell. And you hope to God it's the same thing, right? But that can come into conflict. Now, I'm not saying either is right or wrong, right? The customer may be communicating what they want, but is that what the vision is for the product? It maybe may transform the customer's desire. So we want that information, and maybe it has to be the same person, the same two roles. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that, but maybe you can comment on what can be done to resolve that kind of conflict.
Well, just one point of perspective about this, because I think that's a great issue that you bring up, is that there really are three views. There is the customer view, the people, the users and the choosers. There is the business view, who are sponsoring, building the product, and may also have external business partners in that part of the business partnership. And then there's the technology view. And when you really, really think about what each of those three perspectives value, the customer values a useful and usable, a desirable product. The business wants something that is viable from a business point of view, and technology wants something that's feasible. And so the product manager / product owner, or as I prefer, product champion, needs to hear all of those three views to make the tough choices. So that balance, I think, is a really, really crucial piece of product championship.
I do a 1-hour presentation on product management 101. What is the role for people who might be interested in it? And one of the first 3 slides is a slide, 3 bubbles, and it's exactly that. Product managers should be looking for the intersection of those 3 worlds. Something that is feasible, sellable at a profit, and valuable to somebody who's willing to buy it. So I think a good product manager, a good product owner, a good product team somehow has to synthesize those 3. And if they don't, if there's one of them or more that's out of whack, it's you don't have a viable product, all right? We are running down on time. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. I know there's a gentleman with a microphone over here who's been very patient.
So I have a question. This is maybe going to be one of those grabbing the third rails of project management, product management projects.
Sounds good.
As SaaS companies evolve, when you go from this process where you're basically taking your on-prem product and putting it on the web, and then you start to deliver features faster, and then you get to the point where you're either doing mobile or deciding, maybe we're not able to totally guess what features customers really want. And so you go to an experimental model where you do opt-in with your customers, and you don't actually let a feature go live for real out of beta until enough people opt in. What I'm wondering is, how does that change the map of responsibilities and what these roles are all about when you're actually letting your customers decide which features win?
Interesting. Are any of you guys using that kind of feature switches and
feature toggle?
Yeah. Anybody want to weigh in? It sounds like you have an opinion, Ellen.
Well, I'm not working on a particular product. I have clients that some are doing that kind of thing. It still needs to be a decision that the product manager eventually needs to make, and shoot for some metrics, analytics that are going to toggle the yes.
I think that's the answer I would give it to also is that the yes is going to be driven by metrics that were determined before the feature was developed. And if those metrics are, lots of people say they'd like to use it, okay, but more likely, usually, more often actually, it's more people clicked on it and tried to use it, and came back and used it a second time, those kind of metrics. And it resulted in some positive behavior we wanted, like more time on the page, or more frequent visits, or some other behavior we're trying to encourage that eventually leads to a good business result. Matt, you're nodding your head.
No, I'm a huge fan of feature toggles and continuous delivery, and because I think that ultimately is where we learn the most, right? Is does a user actually, or customer, use the feature? Are they even interested? Will they click a button, right? And you tend to learn a lot when you put something in front of them. So, huge fan, but I don't think it changes the roles, to answer your question that way, but it becomes more important that you have somebody who's actively trying to understand the metrics and the analytics that are coming out. And you filter those. So another thing, just specific thing we've done is we put dashboards up all around the product floor of customer usage of the products. So the engineers could see and product team could see in real time how their products are being used. And not just the bookings and those things at the end of the funnel, but also mid-funnel. So the new feature that got deployed, how many people clicked on it, how many people used it? And it's an amazing thing when they do something and they see the result immediately. It's a boost to the morale of the team. Same thing goes if all of a sudden there's nobody, it's crickets, nobody, here's anything, then it's also, okay, we know we need to do something else, right? So I would say just making sure that we get the feedback directly into the engineering team as quickly as possible.
I think we have time for one more question. Over here. Sam.
Matt, this goes back to something you had said a little bit ago. You're asking people whether they work on SaaS or hardware. I think some of us here recognize from our company, we work on physical product, and we have a lot of software that supports that. We have product managers that own the physical product from end to end. Then we have product owners that own the technology verticals in between. And there's a lot of tension between them about what do we work on, what's most important, and we're really struggling with how we kind of do that cross-functional work while still paying attention to the really important technology ownership in the middle. So I was wondering if some of you guys have seen some of those kind of issues and how we might work through them, and any suggestions would actually be really valuable.
So it sounds like you have a kind of a matrix organization within the product team, within the product, did you say management or owner?
Product management is the cross-functional physical product, and then ownership is the technology kind of verticals in between.
So no one product manager is working with one product owner, though. It's
They're really separate.
Many and many.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I don't have the exact same environment, but the whole dependency mapping, especially as we're building a suite, it takes multiple teams to be able to launch it. That's a significant challenge. And one of the things in Scrum, which we're pushing for, is even though we're doing Scrum, we want a rank stack prioritization of what we're delivering. I want a 1 to 20. And if we can't get that, go back to the table. Because we have to have that, otherwise Team A's 1 is Team B's 7. So it's not the silver bullet. I think the de-risking ahead of time, doing the discovery sprints to reduce uncertainty, and really the spikes are critical. But I think for me, it starts with that prioritization.
So you're saying stack rank prioritization across all projects, not within one particular Scrum team?
Correct, because the Scrum team example, we have different backlogs, obviously, and without having alignment on what is that #1 project we're working on, the backlogs will not be aligned.
So that's opposite the much talked about Spotify example, where they make the teams completely independent. So the fact that one team has a different set of priorities than another, theoretically, according to everything they say, does not matter.
Love to get that. If each team controls testing.
Right, if each team.
They're not producing hardware.
And they're not producing hardware.
Yeah, so the Spotify model is great. If you haven't watched the Spotify videos on how they do product management, it's great, how they're organized. Please check it out, because it actually is inspiring for us as well. But there's a corollary, I think, to in our business. If you have like a platform team that's actually functionally supporting multiple product teams, it's maybe the same model where there's one team that has services, they're trying to create services that support multiple products. And how do you align all those roadmaps? So we tried this, and in some cases it worked well, and in other cases it didn't at all. And we're the product team, the platform team, they treated their customers as the other product teams, their stakeholders, right? So it's really important, and they had a pretty clear separation, as if they were a separate company offering a service to that. So clear separation, clear APIs, but once you, so if you try to do it by aligning all the product schedules and have dependencies, now we're back into waterfall, and it just doesn't work. So I would say that the trick for us is make sure that there's clear delineation and focus more on the APIs versus the product roadmaps.
Okay, we're running short on time, so final words from Ellen and Vanessa.
Do you want to go? Well, I was just going to mention, because we actually are working with a client that is hardware, software, very, very, very complex. And we're forming, we're right for now just calling it an ecosystem team, which is sort of like a meta platform team, and getting representatives from the different communities, including product, to organize, because we're having that problem, and they're looking at the different components of the product as projects, not as products. That's a whole other conversation we haven't really had tonight. But so they have not been, the key is to look at the product holistically, the whole product, from its full life cycle and servicing and the hardware elements, and in this case regulatory. So an ecosystem team is forming up that will, like you're talking about, Matt, that will be of service to the other teams and have clarity around boundaries. So that seems to be working and going in the right direction.
So I worked with teams and on products that did have a hardware product and software products, and when you have teams isolated in their technologies, at least a lot of the issues that we encountered were dependency problems, and there were a lot of challenges in trying to mitigate that. So I would actually advocate for trying to have those end-to-end teams and taking that more sliced approach when it comes to the engineering team, because no matter how well you try to plan it, you're going to encounter issues you didn't expect, you're going to encounter bugs, you're going to encounter potential delays. And I would just say, at least from my experience, it's very important to make sure if you can't have that, you do have more of an API team or those more siloed technology teams, an architect or someone has to be present to be able to make sure that they can have those maybe different communication or organization discussions, so that if they are broken off kind of in their own aspect, they understand how everything else is going to be working together. But it is a huge challenge.
Great. We've reached the end of our discussion. I would like to thank everybody here for coming and for your great questions. So thank you very much. And also, why don't we give a round of applause to our terrific panelists. By way of thank you from the BPMA, we have for each of you a gift. And they're all the same, so passing right down. There you go. David, do we have a wrap up?
Is this a
Matt?
product box?
Right, you can write whatever you want on the outside. That doesn't mean there's anything outside.
Yeah, show it to your colleagues and talk to them about BPMA. Once again, I want to thank Agile Unit for partnering with us on this event. Your feedback is very important to us. Please provide your feedback. And like I said, I wasn't kidding. I think quite a few different faces here. And we'd love for you to go back and talk to your observations about BPMA. A quick reminder on the website, it's bostonforest.org. And also remember to talk about the IoT panel that's coming up on May 21st. Thank you again to the panelists, and thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Mark. And I would also like to have a round of applause for Bruce, for moderating.